Hey guys, awesome that you're here. Come in. So good to see you. I want to show you a few tricks. Hey guys. Building a custom bike is definitely not easy, that's for sure. There's so many things that you just don't know when you start your first build, and I mean, you can't. How should you? It is about constant problem solving. You solve one problem, two arise, and you can be lucky if it's only two. And you have to go on and on and on until you finally reach that finished product. One of those problems is how to build a battery box. You have to create a battery box that has enough storage room to fit everything inside, but still is kind of hidden, or at least looks good. Then your seat pan has to go well with the overall assembly and kind of the shape of your frame. So how do you start? I was there just a week ago and was like, okay, I want to build a battery box. Easy. But I didn't know how to start until a friend said, okay, why don't you start by building a cardboard prototype? So that's what I did over the past week, and it's not as easy as it sounds. I mean, it sounds like basic kindergarten stuff, but at least for me it wasn't. And maybe if you're in the same position like I am, no proper mechanical knowledge, just a tiny bit to get along, you might have the same questions. I know from my own experience that for beginners like me, it is very helpful to get tiny incremental tips. So in this video, I would like to share a few tips and tricks with you how to build a cardboard prototype for your battery box and seat pan. Let me show you my way, how I did it, and some tips and tricks that might help you to save you some time and headache. The first challenge is, how do you get the measurements of your frame onto a piece of paper? What you can use is simple baking paper. Just take the baking paper, put it over your frame like this, and that way you can trace the form of your frame and easily transfer it, so that you later get a more accurate tracing. I would suggest you take a scissors and just roughly cut along the edges of your frame. Right, next, take some duct tape or any other tape and just stick the baking paper to the frame so that it's nice and flush and doesn't have too many wrinkles. While I'm moving forward, I always alternate from the left side to the right side to make sure that it's all nice and even. So now that you have the baking paper properly stick to the rear frame, go ahead, grab a marker, and we can properly trace the dimensions of the rear frame. I want to make my seat pan in a way that it ends in the middle of the rear frame tubes. What I hope to achieve with that is a narrower look of the bike. Also, looking back at the pictures that I took over the past weeks, I decided to cut the rear frame. I actually wanted to keep it that way because it's much easier to get registered afterwards, but it's just way too long. I'm going to show you how to decide where to cut the rear frame and measure the diameter of the tube that needs to go in. All right, let's start by tracing the tubes. I first just feel where the tube is and then make a dot right in the middle of the tube and then just connect the dot. I use my fingers to feel the tube so that I can better trace it in the middle. No. I would suggest you trace everything that you can find. So underneath here is this little bar. So I'm gonna trace that one as well. And with those sharp edges, you could also go along, mark them with your finger first. That way you have an indication where you're going with the pen. And also trace all the holes that are in there so you know where you can mount the seat plate to later. Since we want to cut the frame, we need to measure the length of the new seat pan. For that, just take a tape measure, and in Germany we need a seat length of 62.5 centimeters. Yeah, very specific because we're Germans, to ride with two people. So we're going to measure that from the front to the back, 62.5. So now that we have that, we can take off the baking paper and transfer it onto some cardboard. One tip, if you don't want to repaint your rear frame, then maybe don't use duct tape, because this, at least on the BMW, pulls off some paint. So be careful with how strong your tape is. Right, there we go. So what I used was this colored crafting cardboard, and it worked just fine, but first of all, the sheets are too small, so I ordered new ones from Amazon, and they have to be somewhere in here. Got a new angle grinder. This was a bargain, only 40 euro. And some gloves for the Cerakoting, heat resistible masking tape, also for the Cerakoting. So excited. And all the way at the bottom, the cardboard. So compared in size, you get twice the size. And also this is 2 millimeters thick. So you have a proper stable cardboard prototype where you can fit all your things in. So I'm gonna link that down below in the description box so you don't have the hassle of like sticking those little sheets together and have a proper cardboard prototype in the end. Onto the transferring. How do you transfer this onto cardboard? And the easiest way is to grab a sheet of cardboard. Let's use the new one, properly thick. So this is nice. Place the baking paper on top of it and then draw along the line with a pen or a pencil so that you make a mark on the cardboard. So I already did that, and mine now looks like this. It looks like a child's birthday card, but how do you get the back loop the way that you want it? Measuring the rear loop isn't, I don't know, there's probably a way to calculate that, but for me it was just try and error, and I had luck because I got it right the first time. What I did was take the tape measure and basically measure the width of the rear frame. So in this case, this is around 24 centimeters. If that is the whole diameter of the circle, then the radius has to be 12. From the end point that we marked where the loop has to end to where it has to be welded on, that would be 12 centimeters. I took 2 pens and some wire, and I connected both pens with a wire so that the wire in between is exactly 12 centimeters. Then I went ahead, placed one of the pens in the back and one in the front, and then I just drew a circle. So now, after you've cut everything out, you have your seat pen prototype. Step 1, check if it fits and make some adjustments if you need to. If you have weird shapes like here, for example, where it goes in and back out, and you want to mimic that shape, then you can cut an extra piece of cardboard and stick it on there with some tape. That way it is more flexible and goes better along the form. I already have marked my seat prototype and my rear frame in a way that when I take it off and have to put it back on, I know exactly the right spot. So this is what my seat prototype looks now. And once you have that, this gives you a good indication of how your battery box can, should, or will look like. Can you hear the ducks in the background? They always get super excited when someone is in the shed because their food is in here. But now onto the battery boxes. Those are actually a bit more tricky, but if you have managed to get a seat pan, then you're off to a good start. So the size and shape of your battery box depends on a few different factors. First and foremost, obviously on the shape of your frame, and then also on the distance that you have to your rear wheel. Make sure that you don't put it too low so that when you hit a bump or something, your battery box hits your rear tire. That would be good. And then also it heavily depends on what you want to fit in it. So in my case, I have my new battery, which is super tiny. So that is a plus and gives me a nice option to hide the battery case. And then the MUnit. So I actually thought, okay, I just built a battery box, no problem. But now, after having done it, my tip would be take your time, have enough cardboard to build a few different prototypes and just get a feel of how you want to place it, how big it has to be, and I don't know, just experiment a bit. When you start, I would suggest you just take the battery and just get a feel for the dimensions of the bike. Just see where it might fit. Here was where I ended up. Once you have done that, start by building your first prototype, and this one was mine, but it has a few problems. It is too big, it barely fits in here, and then also what I didn't like about this solution is that it didn't align with the frame properly. It sticked out a bit. Also, it was too close to the rear tire. It just wasn't a good fit. So This was my first try. After knowing what was wrong with that one, I built a different one. I did that by measuring the width in the front and the back and then kind of the length, and just drew a rough sketch on this cardboard. And then once you have that, you can determine how high the battery box needs to be. This one was better. I made sure that it aligned with this tube that runs down here, and that it also aligned with these tubes in the front, so you couldn't see it from the side. But it still was super deep and very visible also if you looked from the top, and also like very close to the rear tire. So I kind of also dismissed that one and just started again thinking about where I could place the battery in a way that it wouldn't be so visible. And that's how I came up with the next idea for the third prototype. It nicely aligns with the line of the tank and then goes into the rear frame. My third one isn't a proper battery case yet. I only have the base plate because I wanted to finish building this with you guys. This was my initial setup for the third try, with a battery here, and then I wanted to place the MUnit here. But then I kind of like moved around the battery a bit more, and I thought, okay, why don't I put it here where I have more space, and the MUnit can go here. And then if I don't close the battery box in the front all the way, then I can run out the cables here and tuck them away nicely underneath the tank. So this would be the setup. There's one thing that I almost forgot to account for: the ignition lock. And this one is actually just a backup, because with the MUnit from Motogadget, you can use your cell phone to unlock and start your bike. How often do you run out of battery on your cell phone, can't get back? And that would suck. So I'm gonna install a backup. What I think is the best solution is to stick it right in here. It barely fits, but it has enough room for the key to turn, and it is nicely tucked away, the perfect place. So what we now need to do is basically finish this battery case by building some walls, and these walls might actually be curved kind of to follow the line of the frame, and then stick those together, build a proper base, and yeah, that should give us a pretty nice prototype. Let's go. Alright guys, we've got the third one done. Looks like a zebra a little bit. Let's see how it fits on the bike. Perfect, I would say. What I think I'm gonna do is lift this one up by putting long triangles in here. Put leather over here so that it looks like the seat just gives me more room for the battery. To mount it, what we can do is air bracket or something like that on here. I don't know how to mount it in the front yet, but I guess we'll find a way. Alright guys, I'm super happy with how it turned out. Let me know what you think. I can't wait to build this thing actually, even though I have no idea how to do that, but I'm gonna get some sheet metal in the coming days, and another project is to learn how to weld so we can build this thing. And yeah, apart from that, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that even those little tiny tips are helpful to you. At least I know that they are for me. If you point something out in the comments down below, then this is really, really helpful for me. Really appreciate that. Thanks a lot. And the tiniest tip helps me out a lot. So I hope I can give back a little with those tiny tips that maybe first time builders need and think about. Let me know in the comments down below if this is too easy for you, or if you like those videos as well. Go ahead and build your own battery box. Hit me up and let me know how your project went. It's super exciting to see all of your projects. And if you want to follow along and see how this build develops and what it takes for a novice like me to build a custom bike, then please consider subscribing. Highly appreciate it. And yeah, apart from that, I think there's not much more to say than Happy Easter, and I'll see you in the next one.